that, and think we're really several hundred years away from that before they are interested in any kind of open commerce. And I asked Billy, I says, why is that? He says, well, evolution comes into play here. They're a lot older than we are. They're still physical. They still have children like we do. They still have to eat, but not very much. They only sleep perhaps an hour or two out of each 24-day cycle. They don't eat prepared meals any longer. They've extended their lifespan now up to about 1,000 years. So they're living in a much different kind of society, as well as the main difference, he says, is their mental. He says talking to them is like interrupting a monk in the middle of meditation or something. And then you find out the monk has an IQ of 1,000. You don't even know what to say to this person. They're tremendously intellectual. They know what you're thinking before you even hardly get your thoughts together. They are tremendously insightful about our emotions. And they look at us almost, not unkindly so, but almost more like in a lab experiment. Like we might look at, some ants or a horse or something. There's a vast difference between us intellectually and mostly morally. He says they've evolved to a point on their world where they live a lot different than we do. There's this very small population there. There's only around 400 million people on the world. We have 5.5 billion people here. If you've traveled around the world very much at all, this is a pretty crowded place. The planet itself looks like there's nobody on it when you fly up in the air a little bit. But then you go to our cities and we're all just standing on top of each other, aren't we? You'd think we would spread out a little bit and share the space, but of course that's not good for zoning laws or making money, so I guess we won't do that for a period of time. They have no major cities on their planet because, for one, they don't have economics like we do. They don't have government quite like we do either. They have more of kind of a wisdom system where they find the smartest people in certain areas and put them in charge of certain things. What a concept. Perhaps if we did that. Yeah. Remember 2 or 3 weeks ago when they were trying to get us to go bomb Iraq again, and all the signboards were out in front of the White House? Somebody was holding up a sign which really summed it all up for me. It said, "Smart bombs, stupid leaders." And I said, that is the sign of our times right now. They're on the media trying to convince us to go over there and bomb a bunch of people and kill them again, And most of these people that are going to die, we're not at war with these people. They're scrapping for a living over there trying to feed their children. So that's where we are at as a country. We have smart bombs but stupid leaders. So we obviously have to make a few changes here. On their planet, for instance, if you have a Department of Agriculture, we would all get together and find our 10 smartest people about agriculture, and we would put them over here in a building, call it Smart Guys About Agriculture, and we would ask them questions. Well, we don't do that. Instead, we hire smart lawyers from South Carolina who just allocate funds for this and then take it back for that and stick it over here. Our whole government's based on shuffling money around, not about anybody knowing what they're doing up there. So if we would actually change our system to something like this, we may be on the beginning inroads to fixing some of our problems here. If you go to their world, it's seemingly very, very quiet. There's no cars. It's very peaceful. Billy says the people, for the most part, looks like either they're asleep or they're all in a trance. He says they're very, very mental. They communicate very openly, like in an open consciousness, like an open phone line. And he says there's something going on he didn't understand quite at first. He says, because we're not doing any of this. Imagine that all of us had become mentally so powerful that not only could we listen to each other's thoughts, but we got to the point where we could really honestly tune in with nature and understand it. You could really communicate with a leaf, and you could literally talk to a rabbit as it was walking by you. We were really tuned in with the world we were living in. And then it fell upon us, as the elders of the planet, to do something about a deteriorating environment. And all of us got together, and we knew the answer. We knew if we took part of our mental force and projected it into the atmosphere, we could not only clean it up, but we could put an energy into the atmosphere which would help all the creatures in nature. Everybody would live longer. We wouldn't get sick any longer. Our metabolism would change, and we could control the quality of our physical life. We understood this. So we all sat down one day and said, let's do it. We took hands. We charged our minds up. We got into a higher self as high as we could, and we charged the atmosphere up, and it changed all the life on the planet. People quit getting sick. People quit being emotionally unhappy. It stabilized the planet. The food started changing so that when you ate a small pear or a peach, you no longer got hungry. You didn't need to sleep as much because there's available energy to everyone. Everyone could tune into it to become educated. There was no need for schools. All we had to do was teach our children to sit down and tap into this consciousness, and all of the knowledge of the elders would be available to them. This is how they're living on their world. And they protect this mental environment. They don't let people from other worlds come and interrupt it and upset it. If you and I were to show up there with our cameras and our tape recorders, wanting to, have them stand in front of a tree so we could take their picture, they may accommodate us. But Billy said even when he was there, he continually felt like he had to be quiet, like he was in a church or something, like he knew he was upsetting something going on. He says they don't like a lot of visitors because normally the visitors aren't tuned into what they're doing mentally. And it's looked upon like a virus or a sickness in the atmosphere when lower life forms come to visit. I told Billy, I says, but I thought they'd ask you on a couple of times if you'd like to come back and live there. He says, yeah, you can do that. And I says, well, how would they do that? You being a much younger life form, or even me or somebody else, if we went to live there. I mean, they would let us do that? And they says, well, it's possible. They brought some people there. He says, they might put you in an out-of-the-way area. But he says, they have a way of redoing your thinking. They can fix your brain right up. And I said, how do they do that? And he says, oh, it's a thing that happens, and he talks, his English isn't very good. He says, before you're born, when you're inside your mother, he says, between the 8th and the 15th week is when your spirit sends the information to the mother about who's coming in from the other side. And there's a signal, a pulse signal that comes into mom's DNA that says such and such is coming in, so we need to create a brain network that's strong enough to contain all the accumulated wisdom that's coming in. And then once the brain is formed with mom's DNA and this new signal that comes in, he says, as the body begins to form, after about the 4th month, he says, when there is commitment, when the spirit is ready to come in and it looks like we've got to go here, we're going to have a full pregnancy, he says, then something happens in the acids in the brain. He says, there's a copy of all of your accumulated wisdom from all of the lifetimes goes into the brain and the acids in the brain. And that's what kickstarts, so to speak, your consciousness, creates your thoughts. That's why one child is so different than another when they come in. You got one that's screaming, wild, yelling, throwing fits. The other one's very quiet and smiling and just wants to watch television. This is what sets up your personality and your character traits when you come in. It's that initial download of your personality as you're flowing forward from lifetime to lifetime. It's your operating system that's coming into play. He says if you were to go to a Pleiadian world, they can transplant the acids in your brain and change you overnight. He says you even get choices, almost like designer choices. What would you like to be like? They can take the acids from other people's minds and so forth and put them into your brain, and it only takes about 24 hours and you are changed. You are, for the most part, it's high-speed injected learning. But he says the trade-off is you're no longer exactly you, because who we are as a personality and as a character is a large reflection of what we know, how we think, and how we act. And all that's going to change very, very quickly overnight. So you would have to be willing to put up with that. You're going to go through some dramatic shifts in personality, as well as your intellect is going to dash forward very quickly. So usually what they do is they kind of like pick out the style that you need. If you're a scientific person, lean that way. If you're a more nature person, whatever it is you might be leaning towards, they can give you these kind of injections, so to speak, slowly over a period of a few weeks and very gently change you into a different person. You get up to their speed mentally. And the nice part, he says, is as soon as you pass over, finish that lifetime, it carries forward. That wisdom